Bluff City Media presents Tigers Live with Francis Carlota. Join Francis after every Memphis Tiger game as he breaks down each matchup, player of the game, and upcoming games. Now, let's get to the show.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Tigers Live by Bluff City Media. I'm your host, Francis Carlotta. I just really wanted to do this show because I wasn't able to go on Tigers Live after the Memphis Tigers loss against Wichita State in the second round of the AAC tournament. Shout out Kenny Stubblefield, shout out Roman Cleary. They'll be on in just a moment. They did a phenomenal job breaking that game down, the result, the magnitude of this result, and also giving some fair criticisms of Penny Hardaway and the reality of this basketball year. I don't think any of us wanted this season to go the way it did. I don't think any of us thought that this season would go the way it did. But unfortunately, this is the reality of Memphis Tigers basketball. A 22-10 season, fifth in the American, a loss in their first game of the AAC tournament against a team that they should have beaten handily, that they should have had a real chance to make the AAC championship game, especially now that we know FAU lost, and have a real shot at making the NCAA tournament. Heck, it shouldn't have even come down to that. It shouldn't have even come down to Memphis having to win the conference tournament and to make the NCAA tournament. It shouldn't have come down to it, but it did. That's the reality of this program, and I'm about to have Kenny and Roman join in just a moment and just break down the whole year, because I think there's a lot to discuss. We're going to talk about high moments, the low moments, what was the turning point for the entire year, talk about Penny Hardaway's year as a coach. There was a lot of discourse about that, and we're going to give our thoughts on that as well. And also look ahead, because now this season's done. No NIT. Memphis, Penny Hardaway said he's not going to accept an NIT bid if they even get offered one at this rate. So really, the season's done, and it's time to look ahead, because last season's history, and now it's time to look towards the future. So let's do it. Let's go ahead and add Kenny and Roman to the stage and get into it.
What up, everybody? What up, everybody?
We're here.
What's going on? You're on the bowels of Dickies Arena.
Yeah, right.
Back
shockingly, we were only there for a few hours.
Yeah,
trust me, man. Look, I love being back here in Memphis, but I wish we were still there.
Yeah, hey, listen, my bags were packed, ready to be there today. We shockingly, it is kind of a strange thing that on Sunday, March 17th, that we are having to do a end of season post-mortem podcast. Based on what we thought would happen at the beginning of this year. I don't think anybody thought that we'd be doing one this early, but
no,
such be the breaks, right? Like, this is how it goes.
Yeah, as I said, that no one thought we'd be here. No one thought we'd have to do a show talking about the end of the season on March 17th. No one. Yeah. No. If anything, today was supposed to be a day of celebration.
Absolutely wild, considering
it's nuts. Go ahead, Roman.
That's wild, considering the way the season started. They went from 15-2 and ranked number 10 in the AP Top 25 in early January to going 7-8 in their last 15 games and bowing out to a ridiculously bad Wichita State team in the second round of the AAC tournament.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's ridiculous.
It's funny.
We don't even have to discuss anything else.
Yeah, we're done.
To magnify how much of a failure this was.
All right, guys, we'll see y'all next year. Bye-bye. No. But no, I think there's a lot. It's funny because, like, Roman and I got to hang out in Fort Worth for a few hours.
We were there for like a grand total of 24 hours.
Yeah,
24 hours.
As we were walking out of the Dickies Arena, we were walking out with a few other media members, and it was like,
is this really happening?
I just had, it was like, I had flashbacks.
Are we really not coming back tomorrow?
Yeah, and I had flashbacks to last year when the Tigers went to Columbus, right, and played in the NCAA tournament, and Christian and I were there together, and Christian Fowler, host of On the Bluff podcast with Bluff City Media. We were there together, and I remember, I was telling Roman this on the way back home yesterday. I was like, or 2 days ago, whenever that was. I was like, it's so funny because like we got there, and then me and Christian were in the arena watching on the floor as Purdue lost to, and I keep saying Florida Gulf Coast. Who is it? What was it again?
It was Fairleigh Dickinson.
Fairleigh Dickinson.
As they lost to Fairleigh Dickinson in the first round. And I remember going back underneath the bowels of that arena, and I was standing next to Mark Giannotto. And Mark Giannotto, one of the best columnists in the city, works for the Commercial Appeal, covers all the sports. He's great. Mark and I were standing there, and we just looked at each other, and we were like, oh, my God. Like, we've got to go ahead and start planning for Madison Square Garden next weekend against Tennessee in the Sweet 16. And it was just like
insane.
And honestly, I think both of us were like, oh my God, what are we going to tell our wives? Like, how are our wives going to respond to this? But at the same time, we were both like, oh my God, like this is going to be crazy, because the Tigers are going to play FAU and they're going to smash FAU in the first round. Then they're going to come out, they're going to play Fairleigh Dickinson Junior High, and they're going to beat Fairleigh Dickinson. And then they get to go and set up and play against Tennessee in Madison Square Garden. Like, this is crazy. And then I just remember walking out of the arena after that game, and Christian and I just looking at each other like, did that really just happen? Like, take that feeling and expound it by like
a million times.
A million
because at least
times.
Florida Atlantic was good. At least Florida Atlantic was a team that was like 30-3 heading into that game. This Wichita team, with all due respect, was trash. They were they were ranked outside of the top 150 in both KenPom and the net. They were number 202 in adjusted offensive efficiency, according to KenPom, heading into that game. There was no reason Memphis should have lost that game to a team that they already beaten twice in the regular season.
Yeah.
It's the wildest thing. As bad as it's gotten, I don't think you could have ever predicted that they would have gone out in the first round of the tournament in Fort Worth.
Well, the wild thing to me is what was the saying that every college basketball analyst in the country said about the Memphis Tigers? They could either make a Sweet 16 or they can lose in the first round of the AAC tournament. Yeah, you saw that from John Rothstein. I know, but you saw it from John Rothstein. That was just more like a Rothstein
thing. There's no way John Rothstein actually predicted that. There's no way anyone else actually predicted that.
But that's of course no one actually predicted. But my point is, this team was so unpredictable, was such a roller coaster of a ride throughout the entire year, that while of course no one thought they'd actually lose to Wichita State. If anyone actually picked Memphis to lose that game, you're insane. At the same time, my feelings after the game, I felt numb, just genuinely numb. I wasn't even, I couldn't even, I didn't cry or get so sad. I felt nothing. Because that's kind of what this team has emoted throughout when they're playing bad. They emote numbness. They emote nothing, no energy. They don't play with any heart. And that was the most aggravating part watching this team play, because when they're down, and they even made a slight comeback, but they shouldn't have been down by all those points against Wichita State. That should not have happened. They shouldn't have had to come back again.
Should not have been down by 14 points with 10 minutes.
They shouldn't. No chance. But also think back to when they played Wichita State at home earlier in the season. Same thing. They were down by, I think, 14 with like 7 minutes to go, and they came back in that game. Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, they were down by 15 with 7:55 to go, and it was 14 with like 8 or so minutes to go in Fort Worth. So a very similar script, except Memphis could not pull out they completed the comeback, but then they just blew it again. So
that's true. Memphis did take the lead in the AAC tournament game, but my point is that the fact that it happened again, the fact they played Wichita State and the same script happened besides Memphis winning, but with Memphis going down double digits late in the second half and having to find something to get back into the game, that shouldn't have happened. Memphis should have blown Wichita State out from the jump. They should have been playing with energy, with fight, with passion, with a give a damn from the beginning of the game, because they knew what we knew. If they don't win this conference tournament, they're not making the NCAA tournament. They knew that, yet they didn't play like they cared. They didn't play like they actually realized the magnitude of this game. And that's what was so irritating to me. I think what was so irritating to everybody watching this game. And that's part of why I just felt numb when the game was over, because it was such a shock. It was just an insane result that no one could have predicted. You said Kenny, that this was a million times worse than the FAU loss because of who they faced, because of who they did. I think it might be even worse than that, because knowing FAU lost already, they lost to Temple in the semifinal. Yeah. So you look at what could have been again for the Memphis Tigers, and it's just what's the saying? When it rains, it pours, and it's just pouring right now for Memphis and for Penny.
Except this time they literally have no excuse, because there was no jump ball call that the refs missed. This Wichita State team is not going to the Final Four. There's nothing like that Memphis fans can lean back on and say, oh, but they lost to a team that did this. No, this Wichita State team just isn't good. They lost the next day to UAB. Their season's done.
So to that point, Roman, the counter, the devil's argument to that would be the refs did blow calls in that game. They missed a hook and hold. That was a hook and hold. They missed that. They missed a push off on David Jones with about a minute left, where the guy got the offensive rebound, put back, turned into a 6-point game, where the game was over at that point. And so the refs did miss some calls, but as I tweeted during the game, it shouldn't come down to that. It shouldn't have come down to a couple bad ref decisions at the end of the game or here and there, because Memphis should have handily beaten Wichita State. So exactly. You are correct, Roman. You are right. Like, Memphis fans should not hang on to those ref decisions, because it shouldn't have mattered. The fact that those calls mattered is the problem. They shouldn't have mattered at any point in time, because Memphis should have won that game easily. Kenny, you're about to say something. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, yeah, I think that it is interesting when you see the way that this AAC tournament has kind of flipped on its head, in the last couple of days with who's in the finals. And it is kind of makes you go, man, like, what if, right? Like, what if the Tigers had come out and played with the level of urgency that we know that they can play with, and that they had the talent to play with? What if they had done that? What if they had sustained that throughout the entirety of the game? Where would they be? And there was a point, I think, that, when they made that comeback and started kind of, took the lead, I think I forget how many minutes left was in the game, but when they took the lead,
something like that.
Yeah, was like 4?
It was 3:30 to go.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? Like, you fight back in a 5 minute 5 minutes of game time. You fight back from a 14-point deficit, take the lead, and then just give it right back. Like, that to me is like, it's almost more. It's almost more egregious. It's almost more egregious to relinquish that lead after you've taken it than it is to be down by 14 with 8 minutes left in the game. Like, that to me is almost more egregious. Like, you were there, like, you've seen what you need to do to make it, to come back. And then it was just like, all right, we're good. We got it. Now let's go on to play the next game. I mean, Penny even said that in the post-game press conference. He said, these guys played like they thought they had a game tomorrow, and you just can't play like that. And I tend to agree with him on that. I think he was not lying when he said that those guys came out playing as if they were just easy going to breeze through Wichita State. And I mean, we've seen it, man. Like, we've seen it. It is difficult to beat a team 3 times in your conference in one calendar year. It is difficult to beat a team 3 times in 1 year. We've used that. I think that has been used in regards to, like, our previous matchups with Houston in the conference tournaments.
Right.
But we're also talking about a Houston team that, last year, and this is not to take away from what the Tigers did in the conference tournament, but playing without Marcus Sasser, playing with, quite a few injuries, like really looking ahead towards the NCAA tournament, kind of like what they did yesterday against Iowa State. And the Tigers just desperately last year wanted to win that Houston game. But let's not forget, they had been beat by Houston twice. It's very difficult to beat a team 3 times in a calendar year. And so, knowing that to be the case, knowing as the Memphis Tigers, their personal history with that in the last couple of years, it was stunning the way that they came out, the lack of energy, the lack of effort, the lack of kind of locked in mentality that they had. Like, they just didn't have it. And that to me was very surprising. And I think that like I said earlier, the egregious part of it was getting the lead back and then relinquishing it with 3 minutes left in the game. Is just like, again, it's just like, man, what are you guys doing? You know, it's just wild stuff.
It was the Rice game all over again. Literally the Rice game, where David Jones hit that three to take the lead, and then the Tigers just shut down. Evie hit that big three at the top of the key, and that was just pretty much it after that. I mean, Rice hit back, and Memphis had no response. Same thing here.
Well, dadgum, really good. Coach Wayne Kelly says, I went to the tourney with neutral expectations. Coach Wayne Kelly, next time you come to the tournament and you don't say hello to me, man, I'm going to speak bad about you on Tigers Live. Better say hello, man.
I don't know if that means that Coach was there.
Went into the tourney.
There you go.
Into the tourney.
Coach Wayne Kelly, I retract every negative thing I just said about you. I apologize. You weren't there. That's my bad. I apologize.
Coach, I think Coach told me he lives in St. Louis now. So he used to live in Memphis, coached the Lausanne women's basketball team for a long time, was very successful. So I think he told me he's in St. Louis now. So I was like, hey, maybe he drove to Dickies Arena and maybe he just said, Kenny, I'm not going to say hi to you.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. See, I read went into the tournament, not went into the tournament. So that's my fault, Coach Wayne Kelly. You're the man, dude. I apologize. I can't. I went to Cargill High School. They didn't teach us how to read, bro. I don't know what to tell you.
Oh my God. Well, look, your question, your point, Kenny, about what if this, what if that. Bro, that's the question that all of us can ask about this whole season. What if they just played consistently with a fight, with a want to, with an energy? They would do so for about 4 games in a row. They'd win those 4 games. They might even beat an FAU somewhere in those 4 games. You know what I'm saying? And then it just zaps. It's gone. It's like the Monstars took their talent. I think I made that analogy before for certain games. They'll play a bad team, and they look like they forgot how to play basketball. I mean, I can remember multiple instances in the Wichita State game, even in the first half. And that's even more problematic in the start of the game, in the game where you need to win, where they just weren't diving for loose balls. They were watching balls go out of bounds. They weren't making an extra pass. They weren't fighting on defense. It just looked so easy for Wichita State on so many levels of the game, and Wichita State wanted it more. They wanted that game so much more than Memphis. And that is the most damning thing for this roster and that team, because I can talk in the past tense now, for that team. That was the most damning thing, that there wasn't enough want and effort in games that matter so much. Like all these games mattered so much. These games mattered so much at the start of February, after that 4-game losing streak, where we would go on this show and talk about how important this next stretch is. Like, if we know it's important, they better know it's important, and they better play like it's important, and they didn't. And that's what made this whole thing so shocking. So shocking to lose this early, to lose to that team, and to be doing this show on Selection Sunday, when we should be talking about who's Memphis going to play in the first round of the NCAA tournament. That's what we should be talking about on this show.
Where Kenny and I go in a few days, you know?
Yeah, where we taking off to?
Where y'all going? Like, you're gonna make another trip. Like, that's what we should be discussing. We shouldn't be doing this.
Are we going to? We should be debating. Would we rather go to Brooklyn or Omaha or Spokane or wherever?
Okay, listen, Roman. The answer is always Brooklyn. It's never Spokane or Omaha. Let's be real about that.
I know.
Brooklyn.
I just thought of 3 random locations that are going to be happening this year.
Hey, Francis, do you mind if I take the hosting reins from you for 1 second and ask Roman a question? So even after the Tigers Live, we did the Tigers Live post-game show from the bowels of the Dickies Arena, which, by the way, man, as much as folks like to hate the Dickies Arena because it's in Fort Worth, it's pretty awesome, bro. Like, it's a pretty cool place.
Good.
Like,
it looks good on TV, at least from my perspective. I think it looks good on TV. I like it.
Roman got to sit on the sideline of the court, man. He was right next to. I mean, he was shaking hands with Naquan Tomlin the whole game. He's just shaking hands with him, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's, but I mean, it's dope. It's a dope experience. Like, it's fun there. But we broke down the game a little bit. But we went live almost immediately after the post-game press conference. And I think Roman's head was, but my head was spinning by the press conference, like what we heard, what happened during the press conference. And so we've had a couple of days to kind of detox a little bit and let our head stop spinning a little bit, get some sleep, all that kind of stuff. Roman, what were your thoughts about, what was your reaction to the post-game comments made by Penny? Just the overall, give me kind of the 30,000-foot view of like what you experienced in there, what it was like, and maybe some of the things that you heard that were encouraging or discouraging or whatnot.
Well, it was very awkward. Penny came out obviously quite upset, just quite with a plain tone, and David Jones and Naquan Tomlin were the two players that I guess the AAC brought out for the presser. And those two are basically statues. They were just sitting ducks. They hardly said anything. The only real answer that David Jones gave to any question was, about his potential status for next year. He told reporters that, anything is possible. We'll see what happens. And Naquan Tomlin said, I don't know, a bunch of times. So that's pretty much all they were there for. And Penny, there were a few more notable things to come out on his end. Of course, the thing that everyone's paying attention to is when he was asked, how can the team come out so flat in that moment? And he was, I don't know. You can ask the players because I don't know. I don't have an answer. We were well
and then he forced the players to, and then he forced the players to answer.
So yeah, that's definitely the main thing. The fact that he literally threw his players under the bus in front of everybody, live on YouTube, live on that press conference. That was probably the wildest thing. The question that I asked him also stood out to me a lot. I asked him basically what he could have done differently as a coach to, maybe have the season go in a different direction. Maybe perhaps they actually make the NCAA tournament or something like that. And I didn't feel like he gave much of an answer towards that. He did say maybe I can be less of a player's coach and maybe the punishments for certain things are a bit more severe or whatever. But he mostly just went into this tangent about how he's the most hard-working coach in the country. He works 20 hours a week. No one's going to outwork him or whatever. And I brought this up on the postgame show, and I'll bring it up again here. It just doesn't feel like an appropriate time to brag about your work ethic. Even if it's true, even if you do work more than any other coach in the country, whether that be Dan Hurley or John Calipari or John Shire or whoever, if you work harder than all of them, it's still not the right time to bring that up. After your team just lost to one of the worst squads in the AAC in your opening tournament game, and you've got to be kidding me. It just shows a real tone deaf perspective in my opinion on Penny's part. But yeah, overall it was just a very awkward scene there. And I want to go back to something that we were talking about earlier. Francis, you brought up the point that, they would be energized and focused for about 4 or so games at a time, and then it would just go away. I wanted to expand on that a little bit. It just felt like there was a real sense of entitlement with this team. It just felt like they were entitled to certain things. Oh, we went on a 10-game winning streak in non-conference play. We started the season 15-2. So we've already made the NCAA tournament. We don't have to play hard in non-conference. And then they lost 4 in a row. But after that, they bounced back with 3, straight wins. And then they're like, oh, we figured it out. We don't have to focus and play hard anymore. And then they got smacked in Texas, and then they won 3 more games in a row. We blew out Charlotte. We beat FAU. We blew out East Carolina. Again, we don't have to do this anymore. We figured everything out. And then they allow 92 points at FAU, and then they lose to Wichita State, and the season's over just like that. Again, it just got to a point where it looked like they were figuring it out, but then that sense of entitlement always came back into play. They feel like they had done the work that needs to be done to get themselves on track. At the end of the day, the season is a marathon and not a sprint, and this team never fully comprehended that.
And that's an awesome point, Roman. To me, that mentality comes down to the character of the roster of these guys.
Yes,
the character of the coaching staff as well, and obviously some of that has to fall on Penny's shoulders. I don't think I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of people in the Discord talk, and people, in your own comments on after the game against Wichita State, where someone basically was telling you to go find another team to support because you are criticizing Penny. And I appreciate both of y'all's reaction to that sentiment.
At the end of the day, we're not even fans; we're reporters.
Exactly. It's that, and at the same time, it's unfair to just give Penny a free pass on this year. That's totally ridiculous in my mind. And I love Penny Hardaway. I want him to succeed. I've defended Penny for years. Like I heard Sane say he's a Penny apologist. I consider myself also a Penny apologist. I've defended him for years. When people would talk to me, message me on Twitter, tweet at me, and talk mad crap about the Tigers and the program and Penny, always defending him. I want him to succeed. But to give him a free pass on this year, I think is asinine. It's absolutely ridiculous, because those lapses of inconsistency, that's about the roster, that's about the staff, and that's about Penny. Part of the thing with Penny Hardaway too is he would always say, we deserve this, we deserve that, we deserve to be in the tournament, we deserve all these things, when nothing about their performance throughout the whole year, nothing about their body of work has shown that they deserved to make the NCAA tournament. They'll beat an FAU, then they'll go lose to Wichita State in the first round. And that makes sense, because the way this team has played the entire year, they haven't shown that they deserve anything. They don't deserve an at-large berth in the NCAA tournament. And they sure as hell don't now, because they lost to Wichita State. They're out. They're finished. So that sense of entitlement is also not just, it's about the players and the character of them, but also it goes up the ladder. This is a failure of the basketball program as a whole, and that includes Penny Hardaway. This season was an unmitigated failure. That's what it was, and I think it's fair to say that. Man, the Caleb Mills injury aside, and I've heard Kenny say many times, like, I don't want to hear people who just say it's just the Caleb Mills injury, that's the only reason, and that makes sense, because it's those losses to. Those 4 straight losses in January should not have happened, even with the Caleb Mills injury. They shouldn't have lost 4 straight. They shouldn't have lost to Tulane, to Rice, and to other teams. I'm forgetting off the top of my head right now because I'm now irritated. But those losses shouldn't have happened. Like the Caleb Mills injury aside, that should not have been why Memphis loses those games. Like there was a problem for the whole year, and that's part of why I felt numb after the loss. Like we're now done, and it's also a bit of relief. Like we're now done with this season. We can try and start it new with a brand new roster, and we're going to talk about the future soon, and hopefully an improved Penny Hardaway as well. Do y'all have any other thoughts on the AAC tournament and Penny's post-game comments or anything like that?
No, I think when you combine what we said here and on Thursday, we've pretty much gone over everything we can. But yeah, it's a very disappointing conclusion to the year for Penny Hardaway, for this team, and for this program, and they got a lot of soul searching to do over the next few months.
Yeah, and we want this postmortem. We want this postmortem to maybe help with that a little bit, right? Like that's kind of what like, hey, there are some things that Roman said just a few minutes ago. We're not fans. We're journalists. Hey, bro, I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I'm a fan. Like, I can't help it. Like, I grew up watching this team, right? Like, I grew up watching this team. I cheer for this team. I am Roman has to be unbiased because he's a beat reporter and has to cover this team in a way that I don't and you don't, Francis. But I hope that comments that are made on this podcast that we've made throughout the year, where they might look like they are critique, like they might look like they are negative in tone and tenor, I would say that what's the worst thing if you've played sports your entire life? What's the worst thing that a coach can do to a person when they're on their team is to stop talking to them, right? Like if a coach stops talking to you, that means they don't care about you. They're done talking about you. They don't give you any thought. And that's not where we're at with this program. That's not where we're at with Penny Hardaway. It's more so dude, like, honestly, you could be one of the greatest, right? Like you could be one of the greatest coaches. You have everything in front of you, the resources, the loyalty in this city is unmatched. I think at any D1 level program, It could be unmatched to you. You could be here for the rest of your career and be one of the greatest ever. But we're going to hold you to an account to what we think as we have looked at this and as we've covered this team for so many years. We're going to look at this and go, okay, these are just very, small things that we think could happen, that could change, that could be better they could make things better for you. And that's what I want this postmortem to be. Not necessarily a shit on Penny session, but a constructive criticism and how we can work towards, making this thing better for next year.
All of our criticisms come from the right place. I think I can say that for myself, and I think I can say that for both of y'all as well. No, just knowing you as humans. It's not from a malicious place. It's not from he can go F himself place. Nothing like that. I'm a fan too. Like I'm a fan too, and I'm trying to be professional when I'm hosting the show, etc. on Twitter, etc. But I'm a fan too who tries to be professional as a media member. That's how I view myself.
We try hard to be professional in our fandom. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically. That's at least how I am. But at the same time, I'm never, if I speak ill about the program, speak ill about Penny Hardaway, that's because I want this team and I want Penny to succeed. Like that's where it comes from. And I hope people realize that. I know that message might not resonate to everybody, and some people might still be upset if we talk about the program in any way, shape, or form, whatever. To each their own. Not everyone, whatever. That's fine. But that's how it is for me. And I just wanted to say on air that how much I appreciated how you all handled that live after such a really obviously disappointing finish, where everyone's feeling so many different types of emotions, left, right, center, anger, frustration, sadness, disappointment. I just wanted to commend both of y'all for how you all handled that live. Seriously.
I said this on Anthony's show that came out Friday morning after the game ended, and I'm going to say it here too. And I'm going to, as one of the guys that leads BCM, I'm going to say this on this show just so that we have a kind of a standard operating procedure as we move forward throughout the off season and into next season. We are done at this point having to bookend our critique of this team with our love for Penny. Like, no, we're done with that. Like, we need to be done with, like, I'm tired of having to, like, hey, I really love Penny, so but right. let me do that. We're done with that at this point. Like, let's as the Tigers live show go, we're not going to do that anymore, right? Like, we don't have to prove our love for Penny Hardaway, the player, to be able to critique him as a coach. He is the very well-paid coach for the University of Memphis Tigers. And so we are going to cover this team and critique the coach in a way that we would do anybody else. And I don't need to sit there and tell anybody my war stories about loving Penny Hardaway or how much I grew up watching him. If you need to hear that to be able to accept the critique that we give towards Penny Hardaway, then you need to tune into somebody else, because we're done with that at this point. Like, that's got to stop, I think. And I think that needs to stop across the board with all media in Memphis when we talk about Penny Hardaway. I love him, but man, okay, we get it. You love him. We know. Okay, now let's just go with it. So, Francis, let's get after it, man.
Yeah, let's do it. So let's talk about the year. Let's talk about the year for the Tigers. So I know a lot about this season was about adjustments for Penny as a coach, what adjustments he needed to make throughout the year. So I just want to ask you a pretty broad statement as we get into the conversation. What are your thoughts on Penny's year as a basketball coach? Off the court stuff, whatever, but as a basketball coach, his adjustments, his schemes, defensive rotations, his lineups. We talked a lot about those things throughout the year. So I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, not 1 to 10, I'll just give me a grade, like you're gonna A, B, C, whatever. So give me a grade on him as a basketball coach this season. Roman, I'll start with you, man.
I'll go C+. I'll go C+.
Okay.
That's a very fair grade.
I thought it was just gonna be a rapid fire thing. I didn't know.
You're good. You're good.
No, you're good.
If you want to expand, please do.
My quietness was because I was surprised. Honestly, I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
well,
hey, when I was in school, I celebrated C pluses, man. I'm like, heck yeah,
Yeah, no.
I'm not Francis, man. I'm not a genius like Francis is. I don't know what your school situation was like, Roman, but I used to celebrate C pluses. So,
Oh no, man. C's were unacceptable. You can't have no C's.
Man, glad I didn't grow up in your house, bro. Man, woo. No.
Like it ain't that big of a deal if like you got a C and you were trying your absolute best. But if you got a C because you were just like, screwing around and not, studying as hard or whatever, you were gonna find yourself in trouble.
Hey, don't get personal, Roman. Don't get personal. Not just like
well, Roman, on that exact note, is your C plus for Penny? How do you feel about it? Is that an acceptable C plus because you believe he tried his absolute best, or is it a C plus? You're like, yeah, it should not have been that bad. Like you didn't try your best. That should have been that. That's the case.
C plus is definitely low for Penny because the past 2 years, if you had asked me the same question, I would have gone anywhere from like a B plus to even like a flat A, maybe even an A minus. I probably landed the A minus range for each of the past 2 seasons. But so yeah, the C plus grade for me is definitely an underperforming thing. The big thing for me is that his defensive scheme was just a complete disaster. I'm not sure if that comes down to the lack of defensive personnel or just, managing the defensive side of things the wrong way. But we've brought it up countless times throughout the season, the overhelping, the switching, just flat out refusing to guard the 3-point line. And that's been kind of a thing throughout Penny's tenure, but it just got so bad this year. I will never, ever understand if your defensive philosophy in 2024 is to prioritize guarding the paint over the 3-point line.
100%.
Because that's just not where basketball is going.
100%.
The 3-point shot rules basketball these days. It just does.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant analysis, Roman. Honestly, that really is.
That's got to be a priority. It just has to be. We saw it in multiple games this year. The biggest one for me is the North Texas game.
Yeah.
8 2-point field goals compared to 16 3-pointers.
Mm-hmm.
That is ridiculous. If you flip that, Memphis might actually have a chance to win that game. Like 8 3-pointers and 16 2-pointers. Memphis might actually have a chance to win that game if you flip that. You've got to prioritize guarding the 3-point line. You just do. Or else you're not going to be a good basketball team. You're just not. Have you ever heard of the Golden State Warriors? How they literally took over the NBA thanks to the 3-point shot?
Who are they?
And now that's basically every team now. And I'm not saying that paint defense isn't important, but I'm willing to let Vlad Golden get layups all day long if it doesn't mean John L. Davis is just lighting you up from 3.
Brian Greenlee is lighting you up from 3.
Yeah,
I think
I'm willing to let up a few 2-pointers if Jason Edwards isn't, ringing up 40 feet bombs on you every single possession.
Yeah, I think it's weird. Like the C plus is interesting because I do agree. I think that you could, if you were to critique and grade Penny's seasons from like prior 2 seasons, specifically last year, right? Like I think you would say Penny overachieved and took that team to the NCAA tournament, right? But we're literally talking about the difference between 1 or 2 games, right? Like we're talking about just not a whole lot of difference. I think for me, the issue is that when you grade Penny, you have to grade Penny on not just how individual games end, but the themes that you see throughout his tenure, right? Like the larger 30,000 foot view, things that you see throughout his tenure. And so like if we were to grade this year in particular, this would be a down year because I still stand by the fact that I believe that this roster was the most talented roster Penny has had since he's been at Memphis, without a doubt.
I agree. I totally agree.
I agree.
And so I think there's absolutely, a downward kind of trend that we're seeing here. Roman has talked about this in the past where he thinks this year's an anomaly. And I would say I agree to it to an extent, outside of the fact that it's the themes that we have seen from the last, since 2019, when 2018 is not a throwaway season, but it's almost kind of like a lot of those guys weren't his guys. He did get to bring in Tyler and Alex, but if we want to start really with his team, it was the 2019, season. The same themes that have been consistent that happened this year have been consistent throughout his time as the head coach. The only difference that's happened is he's fielded different rosters, right? Like different iterations of the Tigers, like whether it's all freshmen, whether it's all grown-ups, whether it's a mix between freshmen and transfer players, freshmen and upperclassmen. Like it is definitely like the one consistent thing that has remained the same is the things that plagued this team this year. And so in terms of grade wise, like I think a C+ is fair, but here's my concern. Roman kind of described it as you can get a C+ if you've tried your hardest, right? Like a C+ is acceptable if you've tried your hardest and you just get a C+. My fear is that that's exactly what happened this year, is that Penny tried his hardest and that's what we got. And because nothing has changed over the years, the same themes, the same issues that has risen up every single year for Penny Hardaway's teams have sprouted up again. The only difference is last year he had Kendrick Davis and DeAndre Williams, who were such assholes that they were able to fight through it and get to the first round of the NCAA tournament. Like that's what I'm afraid of, right? Like that's what scares me for Penny's tenure was these themes that have been consistently popping up over the years, they have not changed. Why should we expect them to moving forward? That's
so let me have you be specific, Kenny. So I guess we can kind of look ahead too. So what specific lack of changes did you notice? Like, get specific with it. You want things to change. You want him to make specific changes because things were the same. What stayed the same, and what do you want to see change moving forward?
Well, the same theme of chemistry issues every year. No matter what person, no matter what team is I think Penny's willingness to throw his players under the bus is a big deal to me. That is not okay under any circumstance. As a coach, do you ever throw your players under the bus? This year felt like I think the only comparable year was the 21 year when it was very clearly pitting the upperclassmen versus the freshmen, right? Like this year very much was like there's chemistry issues and can't even play guys together and arguments in the huddle and, anger about what this, that, and the third. Those are things that I think that is one major common theme that happens throughout every single that has happened on every single Penny team. And that to me is concerning, is the willingness to put on public display issues within the locker room. And I think that is, I think there are always going to be issues, but I also think a head coach that has a firm hold on his team is able to navigate those things. Is able to work through those things, is able to, I think another thing that would be a big deal to me is just the overarching theme of culture within the program. There is no culture within this program. I know he said defensive identity, but that's not culture, right? Like that is a part of it, but it's not the full culture of a program. Accountability, how you practice, how you play, the certain structure of the hierarchy of the team, like those kinds of things, like how things are done in a program. I think if this Tiger team had culture, I think that the Caleb Mills injury wouldn't be as detrimental to the team as it was in Penny's eyes. If the team had culture, I think that adding Jordan Brown back into the team midway through the season more than likely wouldn't have happened. Because I think that is I've said this before, and I think I said this on the show. Those things feel like taking grasping holds of spaghetti and trying to throw it up against the wall and see what sticks, right? Like I can't figure out how to make this work. So let me bring Jordan Brown back. He's been gone for, 6 weeks. Boom. And does that work? No, it doesn't work. What about the plethora of substitutions? Does that work? What about, okay, now I can blame Caleb Mills' injury for all the problems that are affecting this team. Like those are the things that I think culture would allow you to work through without it being a detriment to the season. And so those are things that to me is where those are the themes that I see with Penny Hardaway's tenure that concern me, is that there seems to be a clear lack of culture. I think you see that in the roster turnover. I think you see that in staffing turnover. I think you see that in a lot of things. And then also I just think the overwhelming theme of chemistry issues every single year is a big deal to me.
You've talked about, and all great points, Kenny. I appreciate that a lot. You talked about this before as well, where there just don't seem to be true tenets of the program. What is the real foundation of a Penny Hardaway led team? What is the real foundation of him as a coach? What are his main tenets that he's going to build a program around? And as you've mentioned this before, you think he's still trying to figure that out. And I agree. I think he's still trying to figure all of this out, like how to run a program, how to formulate a winning team and a winning program in college basketball in the city of Memphis. He's still trying to figure that out. But to your point, that he's got to figure it out now. Like it's now. He's got to find a way to create an actual culture of this team, to create an actual base, to have something to be the backbone of this program, because it's unclear what that is. The idea that Penny was just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, that's another problem we've talked about in the past. And whenever the best Penny Hardaway as a coach is when he makes purposeful decisions that make logical sense, like putting David Jones in the middle of a 2-3 zone. That was a purposeful strategic change that makes a lot of sense, and it worked. And those moments for this season were too few and far between for me. The lineups, as we've talked about many times, seem to be not purposeful at all. There seemed to be no rhyme or reason as to why some guy just got subbed out and why some guy's about to get subbed in. It just didn't make sense. And I want next season for Penny to be visibly more purposeful with his decisions, and not just not just willing to try everything under the sun and hope and pray that one of those things work. Like I wanted to be more purposeful with those decisions. If I had to give a grade on his year of a season, I'd give it a C-. I'd be more harder than Roman. I would be harsher, because this was, I think, with the talent he had, this was his worst coaching job by far. He did so much with so little the year before. Yeah. He did so much with so little the year before. And this year with so much, because I agree with both of you that this is the most talented team. And if this is the most talented team he's had, and this is the result for the year, to lose in the first round or second, whatever, of the AAC tournament against Wichita State, heck no. That's the worst coaching job of his career, of his tenure. This, like, I can only give him a C- because he still won some big games against Virginia, Clemson. He beat FAU once. Like he had some good moments. So I can't give it, I don't want to give him a D. That seems too harsh, but I'll give him a C-.
It was the first time in program history that Memphis had failed to make the AAC tournament quarterfinals. Yeah. First time in program history.
Yeah.
And I want to add one more
Penny's
thing.
Tenure, the entire program.
I want to add one more thing to my whole point about it, to kind of bookend it a little bit, is another concern that I have, and I think this is a legit concern, is there have been more NCAA / University of Memphis compliance investigations into Penny Hardaway's program than conference, tournament, and NCAA berths, wins, whatever, like in terms of championships and NCAA tournament. Like there's been more. There's been 3 with the NCAA and now 1 with Memphis compliance that's going on right now. That hopefully doesn't turn into an NCAA investigation. Those things that's concerning to me. That tells me that's another theme that I think that's running through this program is just the lack of accountability and oversight into the program. I think it's super easy to judge the situation and say, in the heat of the moment, say, everybody's out to get Memphis and everybody's out to get these players, but that's not reality, right? The reality is that there seems to be very little oversight into what is going on in the recruiting trail and what's going on within that locker room in terms of just a level of accountability of what's happening in there. So Chris said this, I want to post this up there. He said, is it possibility that we overrated the talent level of these dudes? No, it's not. They're good. These guys are good players.
No, it's not.
Yeah, these guys are good players. I mean, you're talking about multiple, obviously Jordan Brown's whatever issues he had, he was good with Louisiana, with Arizona and Nevada. He was a good player, right? Something happened.
He was the Pac-12 sixth man of the year at Arizona.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there were some very clear issues that, I know he had a back issue going into this season. And what it looked like, I don't know if that changed his whole, the way he plays. I don't know.
How he like
effective he could be. But no, this team was very talented. This team was a very talented team.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment as well. Yeah, I agree with that sentiment as well. This team was really talented. I mean, JQ was, I think, SEC Conference Player of the Tournament, something like that, if I remember correctly.
SEC Sixth Man of the Year last year. Well, Sixth Man of the Year with Antonio Reeves.
Yep, and
two straight Sweet 16s with Alabama.
And the problem
now they had Brandon Miller. I get that.
Yeah. But look, it's hard to say that we overrated this talent when there would be moments where they showed their talent, where they played to the best of their abilities. So it's like, what do you mean? It's hard to say that we overrated when they proved their talent in spurts throughout the year. But that's the problem that we've talked about throughout the show. It was in spurts. They didn't have any sort of consistency. They felt entitled, as Roman said, and I agree with earlier. It was a roster problem in terms of character guys in the locker room, but also it's a Penny thing as well. So I think both things can be true. So let's look ahead to next season as we get to near the end of this show. Next season, in my mind, is the most important year in the history of Penny Hardaway's year as a coach of the Memphis Tigers. I think
that's not even a debate. Debate.
It's the most important year for him. And I mean, look,
one of the most important years in program history, honestly.
Yeah, I think it might be the most important year in program history, for that matter. Because if it goes badly for Penny, maybe he gets fired, and then what next? Like, who do we get from there? Where does the program go from there? And it's going to be a whole ripple effect if things go badly next year. Go ahead, Rowan.
If you think Larry Finch getting fired was bad, Penny getting fired would be worse.
Yeah,
like that is the biggest icon this program has ever had, one of the biggest icons legitimately in the history of the city. If we're talking at this time next year and Penny Hardaway has been fired as the head coach of Memphis Tigers men's basketball, that would be a monumentally dark moment in Memphis sports history. Maybe the darkest day in Memphis sports history. So, yeah, if you're putting it in that perspective, it's one of the most important years in program history. Arguably the most important year, like Francis just said.
Yeah,
I think that all those things are true, and I also think that Penny's going to have an off season of trying to rebuild this roster. I know that
he has
the
no
transfer
choice, right?
Yeah, the transfer portal opens up tomorrow morning, and I think that there are going to be some Tiger names in it. I think that that will be very quickly that you'll start to see some of the guys that have the opportunity to come back will be in the transfer portal. And I think you're going to start seeing, the Tigers and Penny Hardaway's name attached to some other guys as well that will be in the portal. So there's going to be another offseason of rebuilding this roster. Obviously, you've got guys like Nick Jourdain has already said he's coming back, which I think is a big time get for Penny to keep him on board. I have thought, I've said this from the very beginning when Nick Jourdain announced that he was coming to Memphis out of the transfer portal, that I thought that he was one of the bigger gets for Memphis because of just his style of play, his size, what he does. I do think that I called him in one of the post-game availability, or one of the availabilities last week, I called him Mr. Consistency because he's just that dude, right? Like he's just a consistent guy. And so that's a big win for Penny, I think, in terms of having a guy like Nick Jourdain to come back and still be kind of an anchor for that team in the paint. But it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks to see, kind of whose names are attached to, the University of Memphis and who's going to be leaving the University of Memphis for next year. So it is a weird, it's going to be another offseason of trying to figure out like who's going to be playing for this Tigers team next year, and I think what you run into a lot of times with that especially when you're recruiting through the portal a lot is that you got guys who are in the portal that just that want to be in there for a while, and they want to see what offers they're going to get. They want to see who's going to come and get them. And so again, you run into the opportunity or the possibility that it could be late into the summer before Penny has a full roster, and those things are consistent, are as you continue to recruit through the portal, those things are going to be issues for Penny, is not having his team in place immediately, right? Like having a full roster. And I think he said last year he wanted him in before June, right? And that just didn't happen. So
not even close.
Yeah, not even close. So it'll be interesting. But I do want to make an announcement real quick before we keep going. And I didn't even tell these guys I was going to do this. We are going to be starting, and I'm still working out the details of this, how we're going to do it. But on this YouTube channel, we're going to have a new college basketball insider podcast starting up this week with Hitman Hoops and myself. And it will be a subscriber kind of paid membership. It won't be expensive, but it will be, if you want to know like real deal insider scoops, not only just of Memphis basketball, but of college basketball as a whole, join me and Hitman Hoops. It'll be an audio podcast on our Bluff City Media YouTube channel. That'll be starting up this week. So enjoy that.
Hell yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Hell yeah. That's going to be sick. Yeah. Y'all got to tune into that. I know how we crave the insider knowledge, especially about recruiting. Like that's, everyone wants to know things quickly. Who's Memphis interested in? Who's going to go where? Like that information is something all sports fans are always craving. So yeah, that y'all better tune into that. That should be an awesome one. I wanted to add a little bit to what you said, Kenny, too, because in terms of getting the roster together, I saw this take on Twitter, and I apologize for not remembering the person's name. Not trying to take steal or anything like that. So I apologize for not remembering your name. But I saw that an issue with Penny's rosters is, like you said, Kenny, he would get his guys in August, or he would still be getting guys in August or even September to try to be joining the roster. And it's unclear when you're so close to training camp or even in training camp what your roster is going to look like. It's hard to build that continuity. It's hard to build that team chemistry. It's hard to build that bond between a roster of guys that need to click and need to buy in fast. That time is usually done in June, in July, not in August or September, or hell, even October sometimes. Like the Naquan Tomlin thing, no one would have not taken Naquan Tomlin at that stage. He was too good to be available. Like I'm not upset about that at all. But it's waiting so long to be signing guys in August and September and not knowing what your roster is going to look like entering the season at that stage of the year. That's got to change. Like I think as we go into the off season and we go into recruiting, transfer portal, like you said, Kenny, opens tomorrow. As we go through this process again with this Memphis Tigers roster, just a small thing. If Penny's able to get his guys early, like do the recruiting early, get 10, 12 guys all locked into the program by June. If he can do that, I think that'll go a long way as to the prospects for next season. And I also really hope, and I know Roman, you've talked about this as well. I hope he prioritizes dudes who have high character and want to play defense. Like, just get guys who are gonna fight, play with energy, and defend. You can find bucket makers in college basketball in the portal. You can find dudes who can score all throughout the portal. But getting guys who make each other better and are willing to play with effort, energy, and defend, for me, those are the type of guys that I want to see Penny recruit. I want to see him get a true rim protector, and I want to see him get a more dynamic players who are going to want to play for each other, not for themselves. Like that's what I'm looking for roster wise next year. I don't have names in mind because I don't, but that's what I'm looking for.
And I'd like to maybe see him try to get less of the grad transfer guys and more dudes who will have more than 1 year of eligibility. Guys who are going to be able to stick around in the program for 2, maybe even 3 seasons. Because this whole rent-a-team thing just isn't going to work forever. It's just not. We've seen Penny do it, I guess, 2 years in a row now. Last year was quite successful. This year was the opposite of that. It was very unsuccessful. Quite a failure, actually. So you got to be able to find a way to build a culture and build a program. And Penny can do whatever he wants to do in terms of that, but the players are just as important if you're talking about developing that culture that, Kenny discussed a few minutes ago. So you got to get some real program pillars in the building as well. Very important there.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree with that more. It's so hard to build a culture with brand new guys every season. The whole, like you said, Roman, the rent-a-team thing, that's easier to find success in the NBA with a bunch when you have, superstars and guys who are already incredible at the game of basketball. But in college, when you're trying to mold, frankly, kids like y'all 18, 19, they're just barely became adults, trying to mold them and try and coach them. They're still learning the game of basketball too at that stage. And it's so hard to get full buy-in from those college students, those college kids, when you don't know if they're going to be there next season, if you don't know who's going to be sticking with you. That's so difficult. Like, we talked about transfer portal. It's been talked about at length and by Bluff City Media, by many people across this awesome network. And that's the world we live in. And I think Penny's just got to find a better way to adapt and find a better way to build a roster that will want to buy into what Penny wants to do as a basketball coach, but also who wants to be in Memphis, who want to be at the University of Memphis, who want to play for the University of Memphis and play for the city. There's another thing I wanted to ask you all too. There was a lot of talk about, should Memphis just focus on Memphis guys, like only guys who are going to love Memphis and who are from Memphis. No, that's not what they should do. That's not the answer.
But no,
that's not the answer.
That's a silly. That is a listen, man. I'm gonna say this. One of the things that I think Penny is extremely good at is he knows Memphis. He knows Memphians because he is one. He knows how to rile Memphians up. And what is the one way to do that in the city is he plays for the city, right? Like, get guys that play for this city. Man, come on, man.
Unless you could somehow get Cam Jones to transfer over from Marquette, one Memphian should be on this team.
Roman, sign me up for Cam Jones if he wants to come back to Memphis, But no, like there's just, I think honestly that's a real nebulous like idea of like, how do you put fingerprints on that, right? Like every player says that the right way, right? Like every player can say that, but what does that mean? All that means is just win, man. Like, we just want you to win. This team doesn't need to play for Memphis to win games. They need to play good basketball. They need to be coached well. They need to be engaged in what they're doing. Like that. It's not a, they lost games because they're not thinking about Memphis or the city of Memphis as they're playing. Like, that's just that to me is, and this is coming from a lifelong Memphian, right? Like, that's not a real thing. That's not a real tangible thing that you can that I could put my finger on to tell you, like, hey man, that shot's going to go in because Javon Quinterly loves Memphis.
He was thinking so hard about Beale Street the other day, man. He was thinking real hard about the meal he just had at the Rendezvous and how much he loved it.
Yeah,
so that's why the shot went in.
I think that's a silly there's these guys are type A alpha male athletes, man. They want to play for themselves and they want to win for a team.
David Jones loved his Huey's burger so much that he scored 35 points.
Hey, bro, them Huey's burgers are fire, though. Be honest,
they're really
good. They did. They really are.
I'd play hard for Huey's Ranch, honestly. Like the
Huey's Ranch is elite. Yeah. I don't know what they do, what they put. Oh man,
they put crack cocaine inside of it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I could go on a food tangent forever, so I'm not going to do that. It's not that I necessarily want a team of dudes who are going to play for the city. I want a team of dudes who are going to play for themselves and play for each other. I don't want a team full of guys who are going to play for an individual, themselves as an individual. I want them to play for the team as a collective and have each other's back. Like that's what I want. And that's what I hope Penny can get next season. So as we talk about next season and near the end of the show, what are your expectations next year? Do you think things will improve? Are you expecting an NCAA tournament berth? Like, Kenny, you said you worried that this was his best, as a coach, and this is what we got. So do you think that that they can go up from here? And I'll start with you, Kenny, because you made that comment before. So what are your expectations next season?
I mean, I don't think that we can sit here and say that we could expect. I think the conversations around a Sweet 16 berth or nothing, or a second weekend berth is a failure if they don't get there. That to me, that's just not been the case. Like, he's gonna have to show it. He's gonna have to show that he can lead a team that far before that becomes an expectation, I think. So I don't have an expectation of that. I put my hands up because I don't know. Look, I think that this, like, all of his teams could have either lost in the first round of the AAC tournament, or they could have won the whole damn thing. Like, and gone to the NCAA tournament. Like, I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that question. I don't have expectations, because this team on its face at the beginning of the year, clearly, I think most people said that this team should be a second weekend team, just on its face with the roster that's in place. And I don't think that was an unrealistic thing. But again, there hasn't been a level that hasn't been shown that they can get there yet. And so until he shows a consistency in getting there, I don't, taking teams to that tournament and going far in it, my expectations are kind of wait and see. And we've seen the same thing for 6 years. So my expectations would be it's going to happen again. Honestly, that's what I think. At this point.
Okay.
At this point.
Well, the expectations are going to largely depend on who Penny ends up getting in the transfer portal, what exactly that roster looks like. But generally speaking, I think the expectation should be to get back to the NCAA tournament, because if Memphis doesn't, we could be having, again, some really hard conversations about Penny's future as Memphis's coach. I think we were at a point last year where second weekend, expectations were realistic, because you were coming off of 2 consecutive years where they lost in the first weekend and they got super close both times.
Right.
But they've undeniably taken a step back now. And at this point, I think next year is definitely an NCAA tournament appearance or bust.
Yeah, I'm more with Roman on that. I think the expectation should be an NCAA tournament berth. Regardless of because obviously we don't know what the roster will look next year. But even at this moment in time, with that uncertainty in the air, the NCAA tournament should be the expectation. That's what has to happen next season. Or again, as you said, Roman, we're back in the same position, and we're going to have difficult conversations. And who knows if Penny's the coach if they they don't make the NCAA tournament for the second year in a row, with everything that we know that's at Penny's disposal. And what if Penny has another super talented roster yet doesn't deliver, and we're back here again? Like, I think it's got to be NCAA tournament as the expectation for the program next year. But we'll see, y'all.
I think it's fair to say that Penny will have a very good roster next year. There is no doubt that Penny has shown the ability to get players to come and play for him. There is no doubt. And especially with, the new NIL stuff that's going on, and the new Blessed City Collective, and how they've been able to kind of become more focused, I think, in terms of concentrating specifically on the basketball program, there is a level of solid ground there, I think, for the future. So I have no doubt that they're going to field a good roster. It's just, again, like this, what's he going to do with it? Right? Like, what's going to happen with the roster? Is the roster going to be well put together? Is it going to be, you know, are we going to have another issue of another year of issues with team chemistry? And man, how are we going to survive a potential injury? Like these things happen, right? Like these things that happen this year happen on a yearly basis for a lot of teams. A lot of teams have injured players. A lot of teams lose talented players without falling apart. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's my biggest question is like, I don't have any doubt that he's going to field a good roster next year. It's just the question of, you know, what happens with it? You know, what's he going to do with it? And again, that's where I think this offseason is so critical for Penny, is that there has to be a time of reflection and a time of, man, just allowing himself to grow and mature in the way that he handles his team. Right? Like that's my big thing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and we'll set on that regard, Kenny, for sure. You're more of a, you know, if you showed me who you are, that's who you are. And we've kind of just seen maybe who Penny is. And I hope that, like you said, Kenny, he can make those changes. He can look at himself, he can look at himself and really make those changes about how he is as a coach, how he forms a team, what he prioritizes in the transfer portal, all of that, because changes need to be made. There's no question about that. All three of us can agree that things need to change for this program, for Penny as a coach, or else we're going to get a lot of the same. And that's not what either of us want for the program, for the team, for the city, for that matter. That I want the Memphis Tigers basketball program to be very good, because it makes the whole city much happier, in a much better place, and the city gets good publicity. People are happier, people are in better moods. Like, I hate whenever the Tigers are like this, because it's just a different vibe. It's a different feel. Same for the Grizzlies. I want the Grizzlies to do well too, for that exact same reason. Like, it's Memphis basketball for professional and college means so much to the city of Memphis, and I want this program to be better. I want Penny to be better as a coach, and I still have faith in him. I still have faith in him as a coach, as someone who's going to find a way to build this program back and bring it back to the heights that it should be at. So that's how I'm feeling about next year. And we've already been talking for a while about the season, about next year. So, any of y'all have any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, I think Coach Wayne Kelly.
I think we've covered everything.
Yeah, Coach Wayne Kelly said. He said, "I've cleaned my emotional Tiger slate, put it in neutral. I'm hopeful Penny can help me press down on my emotional accelerator again." I think that is probably a very good representation of where a lot of Tiger fans are right now. It's just, okay, man, we've had our hopes up for so long. And now let's just put it in neutral and hopefully he can get it, to the point where but hey, let me tell you this, as soon as he gets a roster that we all think he's probably going to get for next year, I think everybody's going to go, okay, full bore ahead. Let's press down on that accelerator, man. That's all that is needed.
It's all it takes is Penny to get a really good roster, and all of a sudden it's all NCAA championship or bust. Like, it's all it takes. Right. That's all it takes. But look, we gotta get out of here. So I appreciate Roman, Kenny for being on the show, talking Tigers basketball. As we close, I just want to say thank you to everyone in the chat, everyone who's rocked with the show the entire year. This is the first year of Tigers Live, of hosting this show, of doing this show, and it's been fantastic. It's been an absolute honor, a privilege to even be able to talk with y'all, to talk Tigers basketball with y'all too, with all the guests that I've had on the show before, and to interact with all of y'all watching the show, leaving comments in the chats on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you're watching. It means so much to me. I know it means a lot to Kenny, Roman, everyone who's a part of Bluff City Media. So just sincerely, thank you so much for all the support you've shown this year. And we look forward to next season, where we're going to grow as a show. We'll grow it as, I'll look at myself, how can I be better as a host? How can we make Tigers Live even a better show? because that's what it's about. It's all about improving. So thank you to everybody.
Everybody loves you. Everybody loves you, Francis. Everybody loves you, Francis. You don't need to grow, man. You need to stay consistent, bro.
I appreciate it. No, I'm with you. I appreciate the love. So yeah, we'll see y'all. We'll see you soon when more Tigers news comes out. We'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Tigers Live. If you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe to Bluff City Media's YouTube page. For comprehensive coverage of all things Memphis sports, head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co and find out how you can become an insider. We will see you back here next time.